There's a new character in this chapter. He's called Moonface. We're going to meet him in this next chapter. I'm going to pop him over here for now by the tree. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see him, but we'll pop him there. We might see him again in a little minute. Right, I put the bookmark in last time. We were on chapter 5. We've read chapter 5, now we're on chapter 6. It's called Moonface and the Slippery Slip. I wonder what that's going to be. Let's find out. Here we go. The children clung to the top branches of the faraway tree, whilst the rabbits slid down a bit lower. They could still hear the enchanting music of the Roundabout Land as it swung round overhead. We decided that we didn't like Roundabout Land, didn't we? Because it would be too fast and we would get too dizzy. "We'd better get home," said Joe in a rather quiet voice. "It's been just a bit too exciting, really." "Come on then," said Beth, beginning to climb down. It would be easier to get down than it was to climb up. But Franny was very tired. She began to cry. She clung to her branch. She was the youngest and not as strong as Joe and Beth. "I shall fall," she wept. "I know I shall fall." Joe and Beth looked at one another in alarm. This would never do. There was such a long way to fall. "Dear Franny, you simply must try," said Joe gently. "We've got to get home safely." But Franny clung to her branch and wept great big tears. The two rabbits looked at her most upset. One put his paw onto her hand. "I'll help you," he said. What a kind rabbit. What a lovely friend. But Franny wouldn't be helped. She was tired out and afraid of everything now. She wept so loudly that two birds nearly flew off in fright. Just as the others were really in despair, a small door flew open in the trunk of the tree, not too far below, and a round, moon-like face looked out. "Hey there! What's the matter?" shouted the moon-faced person. "A fellow can't get any sleep at all with all that awful noise going on." Franny stopped crying and looked at Moonface in surprise. "I'm crying because I'm frightened of climbing down the tree," she said. "I'm sorry I woke you up." Moonface beamed at her. "Have you got any toffee?" he asked. He liked chewy sweet things to eat. "Toffee?" said everyone in surprise. "What do you want toffee for?" "To eat, of course," said Moonface. "I just thought if you had any toffee to give me, I'd let you slide down my slippery slip. You get down to the bottom very quickly that way, you know." "A slide all the way down the faraway tree?" cried Joe, hardly believing his ears. "Good gracious, whoever would have thought of that?" "I thought of it," said Moonface, beaming again, just like a full moon. "I let people use it if they pay me in toffee." "Oh," said the three children and looked at one another in dismay, for none of them had any toffee on them. Then Joe shook his head. "We've no toffee," he said, "but I've a bar of chocolate. It's a bit squishy, but it's quite nice." "No, won't do," said Moonface. "I don't like chocolate. What about the rabbits? Haven't they got any toffee either?" The rabbits turned out their pockets. They had a very curious collection of things, but no toffee. "Sorry," said Moonface, and slammed the door shut. Franny began to cry again. Joe climbed down to the door and banged on it. "Hey, old Moonface," he shouted. "I'll bring you some lovely homemade toffee next time I'm up the tree if you'll let us use your slippery slip." The door flew open again, and Moonface beamed out. "Why didn't you just say that before?" he asked. "Come in." One by one, the rabbits and the children climbed down to the door and went in. Moonface's house in the tree was very peculiar. It was one round room, and in the middle of it was the beginning of the slippery slip that ran down the whole trunk of the tree, winding round and round and round like a spiral staircase, or a bit like the Helter Skelter at the fair, when we go to the fair in the winter, and there's the big windy slide that you have to climb up to. That's what the slippery slip is going to be like. Round the top of the slide was a curved bed, a curved table, and two curved chairs made to fit the roundness of the tree trunk. The children were astonished and wished they'd come to stay for a little while, but Moonface pushed them towards the slide. "You want a cushion each?" he said. "Hey, you rabbit, take the one at the top and go first." One of the rabbits took an orange cushion and set it at the top of the slide. He sat down on it, looking a little nervous. "Go on, hurry up," said Moonface. "You don't want to stay all night, do you?" He gave the rabbit a hard push, and the rabbit slid down the slippery slip at a tremendous pace. His whiskers and his ears blown backwards. "Oh, Joe thought it looked a lovely thing to do, so he went next. He took a blue cushion and sat it at the top of the slide and pushed off. Down he went on his cushion, his hair streaming backwards. Round and round and round and round went the slippery slip inside the enormous trunk of the tree. It was quite dark and silent, and it lasted a very long time, for the faraway tree was tremendously tall, but Joe enjoyed every second. When he came to the bottom, his feet touched a sort of trapdoor in the trunk at the foot of the tree, and the trap flew open. Joe shot out and landed on a big tuft of green moss, which was grown there just to make a nice soft landing place. He sat there out of breath. Then he got up quickly, for he didn't want Beth or Franny landing on top of him. Beth went next. She flew down on a fat pink cushion, gasping for breath, for she went so fast. Then Franny went on a green cushion, and then the other rabbit, one by one, they shot out of the little trapdoor, which closed itself tightly as soon as the slider had gone through. They all sat on the ground, getting their breath, and laughing, for it was really so funny to shoot down inside of a tree on a cushion. The rabbits stood up first. "We'd better be going," they said. "So pleased to have met you." They disappeared down the nearest burrow, and the children waved goodbye. Then Joe stood up. "Come on," he said. "We really must get home. Goodness knows what time it is." "Oh, what a lovely way of getting down the faraway tree that was," said Beth, jumping to her feet. "It was so quick." "I loved it," said Franny. "I'd like to climb up the tree every single day, just so I can slide down that super slippery slip. But, what do we do with the cushions?" At that moment, a little red squirrel, dressed in an old jumper, came out of a hole in the trunk. "Cushions, please," he said. The children gathered them up and handed them to the squirrel one by one. They were getting quite used to hearing animals talk to them now, so they weren't worried. "Are you going to carry all these cushions up the tree to Moonface?" asked Franny in wonder. The squirrel laughed. "Of course not," he said. "Moonface lets down a rope for them. Look, here it comes." A rope came slipping down between the branches. The squirrel caught the end of it and tied the bundle of cushions firmly to the rope. He gave 3 tugs, 1, 2, 3, and the rope swung upwards again, taking the cushions with it. "Good idea," said Joe, and then they all turned to go home, thinking as they walked of the strange and exciting things that had happened that day. They came to the ditch and jumped across. They went down the little lane and through their little back gate. By the time they reached the cottage, they were ready to drop with tiredness. Their mother was still busy in the garden, and their father was not home yet. So, sleepily, Beth made them all some hot milk, which they took up to their rooms to drink while sitting in bed. "I'm not going up the faraway tree again," said Franny, lying down. "Well, I am," said Joe. "Don't forget we promised old Moonface some homemade toffee. We can climb up to his house, give him the toffee, and slide down that slippery slide again. We don't need to go into any land at the top of the tree." But Beth and Franny were fast asleep, and very soon Joe was too, dreaming of the strange faraway tree and the curious folk who lived in its enormous trunk. The end of chapter 6. Oh my goodness, that was a very exciting chapter. I enjoyed that one. Can you imagine climbing a tree and then going down a great big curly slide to get down? That would be very exciting. Maybe you've been on a big curly slide at a park or at the fair, or sometimes when we go to swimming pools, there's big curly slides. So maybe you've been on something that's a bit like the slippery slip. Right, see you next time for chapter 7.